Welcome to JOY², Live with Joy. This is the podcast where we get to explore the power of joy, purpose, passion, and fun, and how joy, when practiced intentionally, transforms how we live, work, and lead. I'm your host, Greg De Koker, and I believe that when you live with joy, everything gets better, and I mean everything. And this isn't just about feeling good. It's about unlocking joy as a resource, one that fuels better leadership, meaningful work, and thriving lives. Each week, we share the stories, the insights, and the sparks that ignite more joy, because joy is contagious, it's powerful, and it belongs to all of us. So lean in, stay curious, and let's create more joy together. This is JOY², brought to you by Essentia Group. Welcome to the JOY² Live with Joy podcast. I'm your host, Greg De Koker, and today is a very special episode, not just because it's the first episode, but because my guest today, Jamie Mason Cohen, is the reason this podcast exists. So thank you, Jamie. And before we get into that story, I really wanted to kind of share a bit about Jamie, his career, and the difference he's making. So I'm going to dive right in. So as a keynote speaker, presentation trainer for Fortune 500 companies, and podcast host interviewing thought leaders like Seth Godin and Daniel Pink, Jamie is known for creating moments of clarity that change how leaders think, listen, and lead, often in seconds. He worked behind the scenes for Lorne Michaels and was awarded an International Innovation Award in Education by TED Education. Jamie brings rare credibility from both boardrooms and high-stakes creative environments. He is a Meeting Planners International Speaker of the Year nominee, a Dale Carnegie Business Training Award winner, and a TEDx speaker with more than 2.4 million views. That's a mouthful, literally and figuratively. It's awesome. He's also a certified executive leadership coach with the Leadership Circle and has delivered leadership and mentorship culture keynotes and immersive workshops in over 30 countries, working with executives across healthcare, finance, technology, government, and professional services. His clients include Sun Life Financial, Novo Nordisk, Sanofi, Regeneron, Canada Life, Baker Tilly, Vistage, Tech Canada, the University of Western Alumni Association, and the Ontario government. That's his professional, basically, update and introduction. And I'd like to just share who Jamie is for me. Jamie's been a constant source of creativity and inspiration since I've known him. And I love the way, I'm going to say it to you, Jamie. I love the way you live your life. I love the way you put family first. I love the way that you show up. And you're an amazing man, entrepreneur, father, husband, and friend. You've been committed to personal development and human connection as long as I've known you. We met at a men's weekend, which is an amazing weekend. And I'm proud and grateful to call you one of my best friends. I'm really grateful and honored to have you here and for everything that's led up to this moment. So thank you and welcome.
Wow, Greg, thank you. What a way to start your podcast with, first of all, I'm honored. And with that introduction, I feel like you've been doing this for 10 years.
I wish. I think you have, actually. Well, we're going to talk, right? Because the first question I wanted to ask you was, like, you've been literally telling me for years that I should start a podcast. I mean, it's been over 2 years and maybe even almost 3. So, what did you see in me before I saw it in myself?
Well, you mentioned that men's weekend, which in a summary, that was a personal development weekend for men to learn about themselves. And I didn't know you. There was about 40 men from across Ontario there. We were all in a bus. I felt awkward. I didn't know anybody except possibly one a little bit. And the thing that stood out in that trip from the beginning was that you were the leader of this group. These were strong, successful men from very different backgrounds. And your energy, your ability with a certain quiet confidence to lead, to connect with other people really stood out to me. I mean, I had traveled, I'd lived in different countries like New York, like you mentioned. I worked for Lorne Michaels. I lived overseas in Malaysia. I had been around, and right away I thought that guy has a certain quality that I wanted to find out more, the kind of quality that I would look to as a friend, as a mentor. And we didn't really become friends at that point, but I did see you over the course of that intense 4-day weekend really stand up, not just as a leader in our group of 40, but there was about 220 men, probably a little more, give or take.
Right.
You stood out amongst the entire group of people who came from across North America. And afterwards, we ended up connecting in these follow-up activities that these men's groups did. And I didn't usually put myself out there in that way because I can be a little bit shy, even though I speak for a living. But I said, I'd like to connect with you. I even told my wife,
Right.
I said, I have a bit of a bromance crush on this guy. And my wife laughed. And so I said, I'm going to put myself out there. So we connected. And what I've noticed of you in those last 12 years is you have what Chekhov, the famous playwright, when he would teach actors, he would say, imagine there's a light coming from your heart and it's extending outwards to other people. And that's a way you can connect. So visualize. And as you're listening to this, it might sound a bit far-fetched, but a takeaway might be if you're feeling a little bit down, if you're feeling like you're not making a difference in connecting with people, imagine a light coming out from your heart and shooting out or connecting out to each person you meet. And I found that you do that naturally. Is that when you said you're calling this a podcast about joy, I thought, well, that is so fitting for a man who I've now known for 12 and a half years, 2013, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And you have that ability, like Chekhov instructed actors, to exude light through your heart, through your being. And I thought, what better way to extend the impact that those who know you see that light extending out through your heart to people around the world, to experiencing it through an audio or a video format. And in the world we're living in now, connection is key. With AI, connection is going down. There's a loneliness epidemic where 1 out of 5 people say that they're lonely at work. And so we need to hear from you, and we need that message to not just transmit through you, but the power of social media to transmit well beyond the actual interview that we're having.
Wow. I'm just taking all that in. That's really special. Thanks for sharing that. To hear that, I'll probably be listening to this, especially the beginning, multiple times, especially when I'm down. I mean, and we're going to talk about this a little later, but it's like, what are those things that we can do, to, when something's blocking joy, what can we do to kind of remove those blocks? And, listening to that introduction, was very, very humbling and very special. Yeah. So thank you for seeing that in me back then and since. And it was interesting because for the last few years, and you're like, Greg, you got to do a podcast. Like, I couldn't hear past the noise. I couldn't see past the clutter, Jamie. And I know I've shared this with you before. It was feeding, the idea of starting a podcast for me was feeding my worst inner critic, the thing that I would say in my head, that I'm really busy, not making a lot of money. Right. And it was just feeding that. And I was like, oh, podcast is just another one of those vehicles for me to be really busy and, not making it about money. And it's not just about the money. Right. But that's the conversation I've been in for a while. Right. And I got really present to kind of my own suffering, things that I did that kind of created, the ripple effect and really just in taking full responsibility for my life, I got really aware of how much suffering is going on. I know this podcast is about joy, but just a bit of background, and I know, it, but I've seen and I've heard, people aren't happy at work. And you mentioned it. I mean, it's the largest disengagement in employees in the last 10 years. Gallup calls it quietly quitting. And getting kind of present to my own suffering, getting present to other people's suffering at work, at home, everywhere in between. I was like, I really want to inspire and energize and empower people to live, work, and lead with more joy. So thanks for encouraging me to do this. Like it really, I've known my purpose for a while, which is to co-create more joy in the world. Like I've known that for decades. And this is really a vehicle to help do that. And then my goal is to help make a difference. And I wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be having this conversation if you weren't. And to the point, full transparency, like there are times when I know we're meeting and we're having, whether it's a Zoom call or in person, and in my head, I'm like, God, if he brings up the podcast again, I'm going to just like lose it. I'm like, how do I not get angry? Because I know it's coming from a good place, but I literally like, that's what was coming up for me. So thank you for not giving up, on me, not just regarding the podcast, but in our friendship too. You've been a constant and unwavering source of support and love and joy, as well. So, great to be here. So yeah, what a way to kick this off. So I'm going to dive into the next question right now, which is, you've reinvented yourself and launched kind of new chapters many times. What has helped you say yes before you were fully ready? And that's kind of for anyone listening where this resonates. It's also for those perfectionists out there and those recovering perfectionists like myself that want things to be perfect before kind of starting that next chapter or launching something new. So, I'd love to hear, what's helped you say yes before you were before things were perfect, before you're 100% ready.
Well, when I worked for Lorne Michaels in my 20s, he has that famous line that says, the show's not ready because it's finished. The show's ready because it's 11:30 on Saturday night. Right? So you had big budgets, you had a million problems happening on those sets. And yet at 11:30, not 11:31, the show went live. And people criticize the show. They say it has ups and downs, but yet it always airs at that 11:30. And I think that's similar to reinventing yourself professionally. At least I found that, Greg.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was a teacher after Saturday Night Live, I didn't really know if I could do that. I didn't know. I knew I was creative and I knew I was interested in public speaking, but I just threw myself in there. And I ended up becoming, I didn't try to be an award-winning teacher. And I was flown to New Orleans for the TED Education Awards, where Ashton Kutcher was there and Mila Kunis. And my wife and I were given this opportunity to go. And it was because of the teaching that I was doing that I never really felt ready for. But I just trusted my instincts. I researched like crazy. And I could say that approach has helped me at every stage of my life. When my teaching journey ended, I ended up saying, what do I want to do next? And it kept coming back to me. I wanted to do what I do with students, but I wanted to extend the playground to adults. And there's no map, there's no guidance, and nobody's willing to help who's already doing it from what I found early on.
Right.
On the surface, but not really sharing any of their secrets. I wanted to be a professional speaker. And that does not have, it's not like going to dental school or even teacher's college,
right,
as any form of entrepreneurism. So I felt with being a speaker, my belief was I have nothing to lose. I had a supportive wife and I didn't tell anybody. So one of the things that I do is I show things publicly, but I never talk about them leading up to it. And I think that's key. The reason is because what Bob Dylan said, if you share someone a new identity, it can easily be crushed or killed. It's too fragile. And I never talk about what I'm doing, including this podcast when I started it, except the people I need. Maybe I need someone to say yes to an interview. I will write it. I will never speak it out. And the reason is because reinvention is just pure vulnerability in action. Often a lack of joy in that process because there's no one there to encourage you. Nobody's going to give you a break. You have to give yourself a break. So I just realized that courage, like George Clooney's character says in Three Kings, do the thing you fear and the courage comes afterwards. Is that now I'm in the business of being courageous, and that's not patting myself on the back.
Right.
I'm starting something new again in the next little while, a new product, a new process, a new little reinvention. And every time I do that, I don't talk about it. I remember the Saturday Night Live quote, the show's not ready because it's over. The show's ready because it's 11:30 on Saturday night. And a little bit of the George Clooney, which is do the thing you fear and the courage comes afterwards, which is what I've pushed you and encouraged you as a good friend to do, which is you have the skill set. People love you. You're likable. But more than that, you have a depth of experience. You have this cumulative wisdom that plays very well in this framework. And not only that, but I have done it myself. So if you're asking, should I reinvent myself? Instead of looking at maybe family or friends who may be well intentioned, but may quietly discourage you by awkward silences or why would you do that now? Look to the one or two people, if you're lucky enough to have them in your life, who have already done the thing. Maybe they're not to the highest level. I'm not the highest level, but they've gone then the next level and they've had a little bit of success. Like I've grown my business by 50 to 20% a year since doing this podcasting. So ask those people who you trust what to do and be vulnerable and follow their guidance. And if nothing happens, you've just gained a skill set that can serve you in other areas. If I never did a podcast, I know how to edit now. I never knew how to do that. I have a much better style of interviewing than I previously did. And that transfers to conversations with people outside of podcasting. And it's made me a better public speaker. So the skills I learned by practicing out loud as a professional podcaster, because I'm being paid to podcast now, those have served me in various areas of my life. So do the thing you fear and something good will happen.
I love that. And it's almost like the public accountability. A lot of people say when you have that goal, when you have that new thing, share it with some people, share it with a group, they'll keep you accountable, right? And they'll keep you on track because often we'll break promises to ourselves easier than we will to other people. So, but it's almost like you haven't needed that kind of accountability in everything you've done. You're really, incredible at self-accountability. Like when you kind of make a commitment, I mean, you're probably one of the hardest and smartest working, people I know. The way that you work is really incredible. So is there anything else you can share in that? Like just as far as, sometimes people say, don't wait till you get motivated, right? Just start taking action and just do it. And your advice to me was, because I had like 100 things that I was stressing about. And I'm like, what about this and this and this, the guests and the shooting and the editing and the promotion and the pre-launch and the during and, how do I post it? I got to now write copy for each episode. And, and I had a whole list, right? It seemed like it was 100 things. And you're like, don't worry about any of that. Just focus on getting out there and start interviewing. Just have a few, right. And it's been a few months. It's not like I just dove in last week I pulled the trigger, right? I mean, working on the logo, working on the name and, and all those things. But it literally, you were the inspiration behind just do it. Don't worry about any of those details, which I loved. I think that's great advice.
Yeah, you can easily get caught up in analysis paralysis, as you spoke about earlier in different words.
Yeah.
That I don't believe in public accountability.
Right.
But if you do, that's great. And I think that might be even some people who are more extroverted. They like sharing and connecting before something. And I think you're no one is fully one or the other. Daniel Pink says we're ambiverts. Sometimes we're extroverts, sometimes we're introverts. I think you're more extroverted. You gain energy from connecting with people and sharing. I don't all the time. I'm more of a situational extrovert.
Yeah,
and the situational extrovert is I gain power through writing things down. So to answer your question, there's two things. One is the hardest part of reinvention is getting started.
Yeah.
So the hardest part of this podcast experience for you, and you're not alone because it was for me too when I started, and I had no intention of starting a podcast before I did,
right,
was getting started. So that's why I was abrupt with you. When you said, let's talk and let's express all the different components of podcasting, I said, we can do that. I can talk all day about this.
Right.
But we're never going to help you get launched of this thing if we don't just do the three most important things we need. We need to set you up on this platform, which you have now.
Yep.
We need for you to start calling guests after you name the podcast and come up with a theme. So maybe that's another one. Right. And then I'm going to connect you with a editor who is going to help you do the technical things beyond the AI that's built into the system that you're using now. And if you have those 3.5 to 4 things,
Mhm.
All the other things, the promotion, the marketing, the sponsorship, all those things will follow. They'll flow out of that, and you can pivot and grow. And so that is the takeaway for you watching this. If you're trying to start something, you
Mhm.
already know this, but what we know we don't always act on is the hardest part is starting. Just start somewhere, even if it's a false start. Like a painting, you make a stroke and it's not the stroke you want, you can always paint over it, or that stroke becomes something else.
Right.
And life is like a canvas, like everybody's making it up as they go, including the biggest podcaster, if we're using that as a metaphor,
Mhm.
like the Stephen Bartlett of Diary of a CEO,
Mhm.
Joe Rogan. They both said, even though those are extreme, those are unicorns, they started somewhere with very little equipment and they just pressed play and started,
Right.
as I did as well in my first one a few years ago. And the last thing I want to say is I don't believe in public accountability for the very reasons of most people only show up at the finish line. I've noticed that when things are going well, people call or email out of the blue to get a piece of that thing that they perceive that they're seeing. It's not being cynical. I just see that consistently. It's kind of
Right.
a fact I've seen in life. And so that's fine, right? If those people show up when they do, great. It shows me that that what I'm doing is perceived to be successful on some level. When I started the podcast, nobody called.
Mhm.
Now I get about 3 to 5 emails a week from successful people asking to be on my podcast.
Wow, I love that.
So what I would suggest you do as an alternative to public accountability at the beginning is, I'm looking around here. I usually have a journal with me, is to get a little journal and to write down what you want. Simply write, I want the following. This
Right.
is what Ask and It Shall Be Given, the Hicks, Jerry and Esther Hicks, Law of Attraction, which I believe to a degree, but you actually have to do things in order for them to come, not just think and feel it, is I write down, I want to start a podcast, or
Mm.
I want to write a book. And I don't tell everybody. I just tell myself. And when I write it down, it becomes like engraved on a trunk of a tree.
Wow.
Like that is, I might change my goal,
Right.
but between me and that page, that's my accountability partner, is that page.
Wow.
Not on my phone. I write it. When you write things by hand, it absorbs 30% more than when you just speak it out into the world.
Mhm.
And then I write that regularly every morning in my journal. I want to do this, or I am a podcaster. I take on the identity. And then, like you said, as I'm going, I add to that. What does it mean for me to be a podcaster? Well, it might mean I want to attract my ideal clients, which podcasting can help with. This is not an advertisement for podcasting, but we're speaking about your first podcast.
Yeah.
It attracts ideal clients. It builds your brand authority in a way that few other types of social media can do today. And the most important thing is what we're doing is, you and I already have a close relationship as friends. But when you're talking to someone one-on-one for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or an hour, you're building a connection that you wouldn't have otherwise. And in a loneliness epidemic, even the most successful people, if it's a good use of their time, they're learning, they're connecting, and they're growing because of that radiant light coming through your aura, your words, or your presence. They will want to connect with you further in many cases.
I love that. And I love the advice. I mean, and all the insights. And I did take your advice, as you know, and I actually added some public accountability. For me, I felt I needed that because that was something that kind of would help me against my worst inner critic, right? It's like, this is, it's going to be a lot of time and I'm going to be really busy. So I created that founding sponsorship program, right? And I created a value exchange with my sponsors. And it's been incredible. I have 16 founding sponsors, and that's kind of, for me, the public accountability. And it's like, I'll be interviewing them. That's part of the value exchange, on it. And I'm excited, they're excited to be part of it. And I started building a community before I launched the podcast, which, well, I haven't launched it yet, but this is, this is episode 1, right? So, which I'm super excited about. And then the other thing, I wrote a list. It's interesting. You wrote what you want, and I do too. Right? I wrote, my purpose, vision, mission for kind of this whole JOY². Like my book feeds into this, the podcast, the movement, programs and services. And I also wrote a list when I started getting mired in all the details. And you're like, don't worry about it. I was like, what do I not want? And I wrote on one half of the page what I don't want. I don't want to spend hours and hours, editing or on the technical side. That doesn't fuel me. It doesn't feel good. That doesn't bring me joy. Right. So what could I do? And you gave me a solution, right? Having our production guy, work on it, which is amazing. I don't want to spend the whole time kind of preparing for the podcast. What are those things that I can do to, what are the core questions? What are the core themes? How can I build it? How can I make it simpler? So anyway, I kind of just went from what I don't want to then what do I need to do to make all that easier? And then I just kind of ripped the half of the page that what I don't want and, burn that and just focused on, what the things I'm doing. So that's amazing. Thanks for sharing all that. All right. Next
Yep.
question. How do you intentionally cultivate joy for yourself? And I use the word intentionally because I think that a lot of people think of joy, especially in the workplace, as soft, as a reward, as the result of meeting the metrics, hitting the milestones, and then you will experience joy. Then we'll be happy, right? And I think there's a better way. I think we've got the equation backwards, and I really want people to revisit their relationship with joy, and think about what could you do to be intentional, in creating it. So yeah, how do you intentionally create it, cultivate it for yourself?
Yeah, didn't Daniel Goleman say emotions are contagious? So if you're in a room with a group of people at work, what the data shows is within about an hour or two, those emotions, if you're bringing joy or if you're bringing other nuanced emotions like a little disappointment or pain of like suffering or unhappiness or resentment, you might not be aware of it, that you may have a good reason to, but those emotions weigh down the energy of the office. It contributes to a negative culture, not a positive culture. So energy matters,
Mhm.
mood matters, and how you're showing up, your presence can impact the people around you. And when people are in environments where they're happier, they're more productive. When people are in environments where they're around happier people, they are more productive. And if you show up with joy, if you should, not all the time, but if you show up with heightened joy, happiness, peace, then other people will gravitate toward you. It will make your job easier. It will make you want to show up more and get up in the morning and look forward to work, no matter what your work is. How do I do it? Well, I'll do it in a few ways. The first is I do physical activities, physical movement. I didn't used to think that that's the way that it goes, but physiology leads mood. So if you want to change your physiology, no, if you want to change your mood, change your physiology. If you want to shift your energy, don't outthink it, because the more you ruminate, the more you get downward. That's a problem that I have naturally that I've had to work through as being a highly sensitive person. So here are specific things that I do with specific strategies that have helped me, and I know they can help you. I do, before every talk I give, and I did it this morning,
Mhm.
I do Kundalini yoga. I do it through a online teacher named Lee Malice, based in Georgia, who I found when I was taking another live course about 5 years ago. And
Right.
I like trying new things. And
Ex-
whether or not you like yoga or think it's too spiritual or it's too out there, there's something about this kind of yoga that I found, which is not all physical. It's not like working out. When I walk into rooms across the world, actually, giving presentations, I will hear from many people in these rooms in one way or another. Your energy is really interesting. It's really good. And I might not have felt good walking in. So Kundalini yoga for 45 minutes is a wonderful way to start, and it reshifts your energy. It focuses on the spine and
Mhm.
your meridians. I'm not going to get into too much detail if you find it, if it's a strange thing to expand on. Although I think people who are listening or watching what Greg has to offer and are attracted to that won't find it that out there. And yoga today is quite mainstream.
Mhm.
Kundalini yoga with Lee Malice. The second thing I do is I write morning pages. So I have the book behind me on the bookshelf. Julia Cameron wrote this book. about several decades ago, and people have different names for it, free writing or stream of consciousness writing.
Right.
There is data that shows by a guy named Pennebaker, James Pennebaker. And what the data shows, this researcher showed that when you write whatever's on your mind, negative, positive, when you write for 3 pages approximately, I don't know why that number, but it seems to work, for about 30 to 40 minutes, you can find the time to do that first thing in the morning. That's why it's called morning pages. It alleviates that mud, like Lao Tzu said, the mud settles and the water is clear. The water is clear in your mind. And so it allows you to, you can dwell on what's bothering you. You and I have talked about things that are upsetting us this week or last week. Well, one thing that was upsetting me, I spent the past 4 days writing about it every morning. I wrote a letter to the person who was upsetting me. Abraham Lincoln did that. He called it a hot letter,
Right.
but he didn't send them. And when Abraham Lincoln was, after he was assassinated, historians went into his office and outpoured a stack of notes. And those notes said, never sent, never signed. Because Lincoln, who said malice, charity toward all, malice toward none, he
Right.
did not send about 98% of the letters that he had composed by hand, which were vitriolic and angry and annoyed at his generals in various battles. Like to General Meade, George Meade, he wrote a letter and he never sent it, even though George Meade almost cost him the Civil War. So write a hot letter, free write. And what Pennebaker said in the research is that if you write down something that's bothering you, so think about that thing that you and I spoke of, or the thing that was bothering me. I was very angry at a person in an organization who I thought was inappropriate and unethical. I wrote to that person at the head of that organization, unedited. This is
Mhm.
what happened. So Pennebaker said, if you do that, if you write out the facts, even though some emotions got into that letter,
Right.
here are the facts. Here's what I thought of it. And then I let it go and I do it again the next day. And I do that 4 days. It will take down the temperature
Mm.
of that anger, that hostility, that resentment by upwards to 50 to 60% just by doing that.
Wow.
So Kundalini yoga, 2 is morning pages or free writing. The third thing I'll do is just physically work out, right? Your audience knows this, but,
Yeah.
and probably many of you do. I find that lifting weights
Right.
changes my whole thinking process. Again, physiology before thinking or rumination. And I will distract myself. So I will combine things. So I'll combine habits. I will work out and then I will listen to the new singer I'm listening to, Youngblood, who did a cover for Ozzy Osbourne called Changes. And in my life professionally, I'm going through changes now. And so I'm almost in tears. I'm feeling emotions that I wouldn't have felt even if I'm playing Youngblood at home. I'm working out in a gym. I'm going somewhere or in my space. I'm listening to music or an audiobook to distract me. And that's a healthy distraction, not drugs, not gambling, not porn or other negative distractions. These are positive distractions that can help. The other thing I'll say is, I know you do this because I see your Facebook, is walking in nature.
Right.
So whenever I walk in nature, my first thought is, why don't I do this more?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I not going outside? No, we can't. We're in February in Canada and the Toronto area. So now is not a time maybe to do that, although it couldn't hurt. But when I can, when you can, late March, April, May, June, get out and get in nature. Again, the data backs it up. It's healthy. In Japan, don't they call it sunbathing? It's get out, some vitamin D, go for a walk. Mother Teresa said, I walk because my problems can't keep up with my walking.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's where I look at spiritual masters in different traditions. All were walkers, popes, Mother
Forest
Teresa, Buddhists.
bathing.
What?
Another, do you have the Shinrin Yoku? Forest bathing is another, really, kind of experiencing nature. And I think that's another way to
Yeah.
connect with people, connecting with nature. You said we're starving for connection. I mean, people were missing out on that in social media. That's another beautiful way to connect.
And doing this, you don't need
Mhm.
a podcast to do this, but sometimes I go inward and I go into my own retreat, my own refuge, but sometimes I go into my head too much. Sometimes the best thing you can do is speak to a friend or speak to someone who you really trust, who can be a vessel or can hold space for you or can be a witness to what you're going through. And we're lucky if we have those people. I feel you're one of those few people. I've said this to my wife. Greg is one of the few men I know, of different, interesting, successful men that I've known in my life, who understands when one man shares something that is difficult, what to do with it. And it's not an attack on all men, but I think sometimes men have trouble with vulnerability. Women do too, by the way. But middle-aged men like us sometimes don't know what to do with vulnerability.
Right.
They get awkward. They try to fix it, or they just sit there like a statue. And so I think having conversations and reaching out to those few trusted people who are not just in it for the transaction, who are not just in it to get something when things are good, those are the real friends. Those are the keepers. And those people are the ones to share with, because in that instance, that can be something that can help as much as anything, is a true conversation, even if it's for 15 minutes or a text. Like, your texts are magical. Like when Greg De Koker texts you, no matter what's going on with him, you can feel, and you can't always with a text, the tone. The tone is encouraging. It's supportive. It's, I got your back. It's like, you're awesome. And sometimes people just want, as a friend, for you to bear witness and to be encouraging them when they're not seeing it within themselves in that moment.
Wow. That's incredible. And it reminded me too of the way that, when you came up to me during one of our integration groups, I think it was called our I group, right after that weekend, that men's weekend. And you had just kind of said, no one's ever said this. No one's ever come up to me and just kind of said, hey, listen, like, I can't remember exactly what you said, but you're just like, I like how you showed up. And, there's something along those lines. I like how you do show up. I would love to get to know you. And it was, it was like you said, it was kind of a bit of a bromance. And typically guys, we're not as good as far as putting ourselves out there and being vulnerable. And you definitely put yourself out there, and we might not even be here having this conversation and develop that relationship had you not done that. So, that was an incredible journey. I mean, I felt really honored. I mean, for someone to kind of see me, I think a lot of people like that, to be seen, heard, and valued. We don't really experience that, to be respected, to be trusted. So I love everything that you shared. It reminded me too, you mentioned, me going out into nature. And I remember that, like, let's say I wanted to do promoting one of my retreats, and I wanted to go, do a video, and I'm already in my head and I'm already thinking it and I'm scripting it. It doesn't feel very natural. It doesn't feel very fun. Doesn't feel very me. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go do the stairs, cause I can kind of listen to a podcast. I can be in nature and I can exercise. It's kind of like not multitasking as much as it is. I kind of called it habit stacking. But what it did for me and what it does for me is it gets me out of my head. And then I make a commitment to myself I'll think about, what I want to share. And then after I'm done, I will literally just record a video, and I call it one take wonder, not because they're always wonderful, not because I'm always a one take wonder, but just because that's my commitment to myself to just do it in one take. I don't need to redo it. I don't need to edit it, because if I didn't say it exactly, it didn't come out exactly, at least it came out real. Right. And and that's what I wanted to convey. And you also mentioned something too, even the working out and getting into our heads, right? That whole paralysis of analysis. And I think it's important to understand that, like, we can rationalize anything any way we want in our heads, but our bodies are incapable of lying. Like that reaction that we have, that gut reaction, they say, trust your gut, trust your instinct. I mean, I think that's another way to really help to cultivate joy, and maybe even remove those things that block joy. If there's someone, again, it could be a relationship, you have that uncomfortable feeling every time you're with that person. Well, maybe, there's something about that connection in the relationship that's not really, maybe your values aren't aligned. Maybe there's something that's off, whatever that might be. But I think it's to really trust that body. And I think part of, what you shared, a lot of it is getting out of your head, through the yoga, through the working out and the weights. So I think that's a great way to kind of get out of our heads and to feel, joy, to really feel in our bodies, I think is very special.
I'd also add hobbies.
Yeah.
I was speaking with an entrepreneur not so long ago, and I just asked him, hey, do you have any what hobbies do you have? Because I knew he was an entrepreneur and he was a dad, a committed dad and a husband. And he looked at me and he said, I don't have one.
Right.
And I didn't know where to go with that, because I thought, well, I wasn't judging him. He's a really cool guy, but I thought, you have no outlet. That's what I was thinking. I was like, when things go south, when things are not working out, when you're doing your work or with your kids, like a man, you know that, like we're committed fathers and we are working around the clock sometimes as an entrepreneur, but we also need something else, right? We need something else that feeds our soul. And I just thought, well, that's sad if someone doesn't have something else, unless their work is so compelling that that's all they have, which I think a lot of people have that. So my other thing is, I believe in hobbies. And also the science and data backs that up. Is like, I do large scale abstract painting. I haven't done it recently because I've been so busy, right? So I need to get into it. But what is the hobby? What is your craft? A friend of ours, Tom Petersall, who's an entrepreneur, he's a brilliant woodworker. So he does these woodworking masterpieces that I have the cookie, like this wooden table in our family room that is like the centerpiece. And I'm so proud of him that he does that. And so all these things are wonderful. The one thing I would add is get yourself a hobby or reinvent yourself, and don't put aside a hobby, because that can be the thing that can get you through difficult times as much as any of the physical exercises or the writing activities that we've talked about.
I love that idea. And I think also too, when you're doing something, whether it's a creative exploration, like painting or woodworking, or I'll do wood burning occasionally. I'll find some driftwood and wood burn some stuff on it. I find that one thing it does is it does get me out of my head. If I'm kind of struggling with something and there's something that's upsetting me and I haven't really figured out, like, what do I do with this? Or how do I let it go? Or where do I put this? How can I learn from it? How can I take that positive and move forward and look at it as a lesson and leave the rest behind? Why am I still carrying, the anger, the sadness? Sometimes that'll get me out of my head, and a new idea will pop in because I'm not totally focused on it. I'm completely, like you mentioned, positive distractions. I love that. So I'm thinking about something totally different, and then an idea. And it's like those inspired, it's that inspiration that kind of comes in when we're not necessarily trying so hard or gripping so tightly to figure it out, right? That we just kind of let go of it. And often the solution will show up or a way will show up.
And you made a great point there, which is, if I ask you this, and I can answer this, the best moments or the best things in my life often came when I wasn't aiming for them.
Yeah, right.
My relationship with my wife. I came out of a bad breakup I was grateful to be out of. I was engaged to someone else in my early 30s, and I was devastated that I made such a bad choice in terms of I haven't spoken to that person since. We weren't aligned. I was mad at myself, not at the other person.
We got engaged and disengaged, apparently.
Yeah, disengaged, right? Literally disengaged. And so I ended up getting set up with my wife through my sister. I wasn't looking for it. I didn't want it. And I just said, okay, fine, I'll go on a blind date, which I don't remember the last time I had done that.
Right.
And right away we hit it off. And even my best speaking engagements, like I have this long-term partnership with one of the biggest companies in the world. I wasn't looking for that. I was over here saying, I need to focus on these companies and these types of associations. But then over here, I got this opportunity. Do you want to pitch this company? Oh, whatever. Okay. I've never worked with a company like that. And now I've worked with them since 2019, and they are like the jewel of my working relationships. So sometimes it's dangerous. Actually, it's most of the time it's dangerous for our psyche, for even the people around us. It's not productive. If we are thinking too close to what happened. Why is this happening? Yeah. It's okay to feel sorry for ourselves.
Yeah.
But if we are too quickly trying to make sense of it, like you and I we're similar, and like we're meaning makers. We want to make sense in meaning and the whys, and we're looking for the vision and the purpose. That's okay. But if we're going through a difficult time, like what you and I both shared, I would give myself the advice is, Jamie, stop trying to make sense of that decision, what they did.
Yeah.
I don't have control over that. God grant me the strength to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Right.
Know the difference. Rumination, going over and over and over again,
Yeah.
is not helping me. It's not helping my family, and it's not helping me to sit in this. I need to feel this,
Yeah.
but I can feel this through meditation by John Kabat-Zinn. Great course on Masterclass, or take the course for free. I can sit it in. I can do yoga. I can write it down. But whenever I feel ruminating, switch. Do one of these things. I don't care what you do. Don't sit in your own and ruminate on feeling sorry for yourself. Feel that, but feel it and then distract. And then the best thing in your life will come through and you will fall upwards. What you're going through now, I have no question, you will fall upwards. What happened to me last week, because it happened to me, I didn't ask for it. Professionally, something very annoying happened.
Right.
Every time something like that has happened, rejection is redirection. It's true.
Right.
I do fall upward, and so do you. And so do people if they believe that those people left or something didn't happen, something better is going to come in its place. Another door will open. These are cliches, but they're cliches for a reason, because they've helped people and people have seen results because of the belief in certain aphorisms or mantras or beliefs. And that's one of them, or multiple ones. Is don't just look at joy, look at what removes from your life, the people who are removed from your life, the situations that were toxic. When you remove toxic people and toxic situations from your life, good things will flow in. So say good that happened. Not everything. I wouldn't say good. But if negative people left your life, instead of trying to grasp on or find out why, let them go. Thank God they left.
Right.
And new people will come in. Maybe not right away, but like my wife said, 2-3 months, something comes in the moment you expect it the least. It shows up and you're like, oh, I didn't see that coming, and the timing is perfect.
And they say nature abhors a vacuum, right? So, I mean, whatever you're kind of getting rid of, I mean, there's that space that will be filled. So I love that. You brought up a lot of good points. And one thing I really want to highlight that I really love and I talk about often is not dismissing or diminishing your feelings, right? I mean, because you said a few times, like, feel it. And I think that's important because I think, myself included, like, I can easily just try to bypass the negative feelings because that's not, who I am in my essence, but the thing is, it's like, it's a real feeling and it's something that I'm going through. So for me, it's like feeling it, really feeling it. And then the hot letter, I think that's a great way to kind of get it out. I always say better out than in. I love that you write it, but don't send it, because often that can make things a lot worse, right? Just to kind of get it out of your body so you can read it. So feel it. But don't marinate in the negativity. Don't ruminate in it, as you said. So again, that's easier too, to honor the way that you're feeling, but not let it take you off course. What are those things like Michael Beckwith? I love that 3-step process. Like, cause I've been intrigued with how people let go of stuff, cause it's like, what do you do to create joy? But also, what do you do to remove those things that block joy? And it's like, sometimes that holding on to something is blocking the joy. It's like, and I've asked probably minimum 50 people, like, how do you let stuff go? What's your process? Like, how do you think about it? How do you do? Is there a physical part of it? And probably the one that resonated with me, there's lots of different pieces along the way and lots of great learning. The one that Michael Beckwith shares is one, it's accept it. Oftentimes we haven't even fully accepted it. We're just like, we're still in, I can't believe they did that. I can't believe they said that. Or, maybe it's something that you did or you said or whatever, like, can't believe I did that. I should have known better, whatever that might be. But one, it's just accepting it. And then the two is harvest the good. What good? And again, it's great to journal. It's great to write about or share with a friend, however you kind of get that out. What are those good things that you're going to learn, that you're going to take forward from there? And then third is forgive the rest. Forgive the other person, forgive yourself, forgive the situation, whatever that looks like, but just let it go. It's like that resentment thing. Resentment's like, someone, what is it? Someone drinking poison, like someone drinking. No, it's someone drinking. What is the resentment expression? It's like
I
it's like,
think it's,
I'm
yeah,
drinking poison, but
I
I'm
think, yeah,
expecting
I
the
think you
other
have the idea.
person. It's like I'm drinking the poison, but I'm expecting someone else to die.
Yeah,
They were
yeah.
taking a PERT
Like,
or whatever that is. I know it sounds really negative and definitely not
no,
joyful, but
but
I
it's
mean,
true though. They
yeah,
say that
it's
you're
only
the
for
one
you.
affected.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
because I'm
you're
drinking the
drinking the
poison,
poison.
right? But
Yeah,
I'm
when
expecting someone else to get the message, learn the lesson, or,
yeah,
or whatever, something worse than that. But anyway.
yeah. No, no, it's true. One thing I was going through, someone said, "Well, you should call that person out. This pretty well-known person,
Right.
you should call them out, and you should get on a call with them and tell them what they did." And someone I really respect. And I thought, I guess I could do that,
Yep.
but even just thinking about it, I thought, how is that going to help my life? They're the ones who acted inappropriately and unethically.
Hmm.
Uh, I just want to move on from this. I don't trust my own temper that if I get on a call,
Right.
that I can't talk like I'm talking with you now.
It's great awareness.
And so I emailed the person back in a very restrained way without emotion, letting them know that what they did was not, that I see it
Hmm.
and that I'm not just going to sweep it under the rug. And this person's not used to, I don't think, people calling them out at all
Right.
because they have a little bit of power in their world. And so they said, I'm happy to talk to you about it. And I thought, no, I chose not to. This was recent.
Yeah.
And I think the reason I chose was not, I'm afraid of a difficult conversation, but it's not always to say the right thing in the right place, but
Mhm.
far more difficult to leave unsaid the wrong thing in the tempting moment.
Right.
And I felt in this particular case, it did me no good.
Mm-hmm.
This person has to live with themselves, whether or not they see what they did was wrong, and it was wrong, and I didn't deserve it.
Right.
The old me, meaning me in my 20s or 30s or even 40s, would have said, I want to get revenge and get back at this person. And I want everyone to know. And I thought, that doesn't help me. And every time I think about it like that, I get stressed out. And like what you said, it has an effect on us when we're the opposite of joy. When I'm in joy, for the most part, I feel good,
Oh,
right? That's part of being joy. What joy is to me, it's a feeling of exuberance. It's a feeling of lightness. It's an inexplicable feeling of groundedness, of unself-consciousness. I'm just so present. It's being with those I love, with my family, with the few people outside of my family, people like you, like who make me feel good or encouraging. And yet, if I don't feel like that, and thinking about having a conversation with this person or someone like that for even 5 minutes and then ruminating afterwards, did I say what I wanted to say in the tone? Did they hear it? Did they accept? All of that stuff sends me down the wrong path, the wrong road less traveled, to a dark place. And so that was an example of, or this is an example in real time I'm dealing with now, of not always to say the right thing in the right place, but far more difficult to leave unsaid the wrong thing in the tempting moment, and to be the bigger person. And to be the bigger person, or when they go low, you go high. They went low, and I'm not trying to be self-righteous. I am just trying for my own preservation and my own growth, is to say, no, I can say whatever I want on that piece of paper. I can tell those around me how I
mm,
feel, which I have,
yep.
but it's going to end there, because I'm not going to go down a path which might make me spiral into feelings of sadness, disappointment, anger, self-doubt, all that stuff. Life is hard enough. And like you said, I think an important part of this conversation for me is, it's not just about finding joy.
Yeah.
It's about removing the barriers to joy, and to be able, with self-awareness and with good friends like you or therapists. I've been to therapists several times in my life
Mm,
who are more objective, and the right therapist can give you a little more room and space to see yourself in a way that's gentle, but yet it's insightful, to help remove the barriers or the core issues so that joy can naturally flood in.
I love it. It's like even Mel Robbins talks about let them, right? She's got her book. She has a podcast episode. She mentions that all the time, like let them. I mean, that's a wonderful way not to let something get in the way of your joy. right? It doesn't have to be about trying to control someone or trying to be right often, right? That can be something, someone, I've heard this, like, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And some people say both. And it's like, okay, well, does it really matter? Like, what that is? I mean, I'll catch myself too. If I know something and someone else is really adamant about like, this is the way that it is. And I know that that isn't, but it doesn't really matter. Like, I don't need to say that specific fact isn't totally right. Like, what do I gain from that? So, that's something, again, doesn't bring me joy. It's not going to bring them joy. It's like, and it's not important in the overall kind of conversation of what we're doing. So, hey, I know we've been chatting for a while, which is amazing. But before we wrap up, like, what do you hope those listening to our conversation feel after listening to this episode?
That you're not alone.
Yeah.
That whether you are struggling with something in your life that you're having trouble getting over, or a problem that seems to keep coming up for you, there is hope. And it's not hope as in some abstract idea. It's tangible hope that with one or two small changes or additions,
Mm-hmm.
you can get a hold of this thing we call joy, which feels ephemeral. It feels sometimes far away and out of reach. With whether we talked about physical activity, which you already know, but getting back even in the winter, which it is now, where we are, whether it's yoga or morning pages, writing a hot letter, it's walking in nature, like you said, forest bathing. It's finding ways to remove an obstacle that is impeding your joy and having the courage to look within and say, this keeps happening. Why don't I just try something new? Why don't I find a healthy distraction to sublimate this negativity once I feel the pain into something positive? Any of those specific actionable things, I'm sure will help you. It might not help you the moment you do it, but over time, even a week will make tangible changes in your life. And this also goes for if you're in a place, if you're a middle-aged person or not, and you happen to be going through some kind of reinvention, sometimes joy seems out of reach at that moment because you always seem to be in the grind. You always seem to be in the act of doing, and it's hard sometimes to allow yourself to celebrate wins. So I would end with,
Well,
just like you're at this time about to press stop on recording the first podcast after we've talked about this, coming full circle after 2 years.
yeah.
And I believe this is the beginning, the first day of a path and a journey where the journey will be the destination, but the destination will also bear fruits of joy. And so if you're like Greg and starting a podcast, or if you're like me and you're going through nuanced changes or shifts, for me, it was a new website and a new speakers reel, which is a part of what I do. And I have other projects that I'm working on, like I'm sure those who are listening. It's to give yourself some grace. It's to be gentle with yourself. It's to find the joy in the journey, not just the destination,
Yeah.
and look for micro wins, which is one of the attributes of finding joy. If you're having trouble finding them, then call Greg, because Greg is the best person ever who will celebrate your micro wins and will know what to do with it. And if not Greg, ask someone or find someone or attract someone new who, when you share something small along that journey, and this is where the public accountability, I believe in sharing publicly to the very few trusted people when something goes well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just enjoy that warmth of that person saying, good job, amazing. And if someone shares something with you, you be the one who says, I'm proud of you, man. That's awesome. Way to go. Good job. Because everybody needs to hear that. I don't care what level you are in your life, what stage, what phase. Joy is celebrating each other's wins along the way.
I love it. It's like we share a similar value. Thanks for sharing all that. That's a lot packed into those last few minutes. That's amazing. It's like a summary of the whole podcast. I love that, joy's closer than you think. It doesn't have to be out of reach. And I want people to also to feel just to add to what you're saying, that they deserve it, right? Maybe they're going through something and you're thinking, okay, when I land that next job, when I, reduce my debt, eliminate my debt, when I find that next relationship, when I repair this relationship, whatever that might be, then I deserve joy. Then I'll feel joy. I really want people to kind of live with joy, like make it be, on purpose, not accidental, not as a reward, not as a result, and really look at what that can do to shift the way that you're living. Like I tell people, hey, you're going to a family reunion, you're going to a networking meeting, you're going to a business meeting, you're going to a retreat, you're going to try a new program. You can decide now how you're going to be in that. You can decide now it's going to be transformational, that it's going to be amazing, as opposed to going there hoping and expecting, like certain things, or not knowing what to expect and letting the circumstances or the people dictate how you feel. No, just bring it. Bring your joy with you. And I love, how you bring people up. We're both committed to leaving people better than we found them. And I love the idea of bringing people up, lifting each other up, and calling each other up, as opposed to calling each other out. I think that's a beautiful differentiation. That sounds negative. It sounds judgy. Let's call each other up. Like, we know that this is what they want. We know that's their big dream. And maybe they're not doing or saying something that's aligned with that. Let's call them up to it, right? I like telling people, hey, if you don't kind of believe in yourself or your dream, borrow my belief in you and borrow my belief in your dream until you do. And you're similar to that as well. So, Jamie, thanks so much for not just for our conversation today, and not just for being the inspiration of this podcast and for the reason that this exists, but for your unwavering, your unconditional support, love, joy that you've given me, our friendship, over the last 12 years, the way that you started this, how intentional you were with our relationship. Everything, has been very special in our journey together. So I'm glad you're on this journey with me. So thank you very much. I really appreciate you. You've been a gift to me in my life.
Yeah, you've been a gift too. It's been a pleasure and an honor, and I can't wait to be someone who's not just the first guest, but someone who listens, subscribes, and tells everybody about the transformative presence that is Greg De Koker.
Oh, I appreciate it. And I hope for those listening, like there's some different things that resonated, and not everything does, often, but if you found something, just carry it with you, right? And if joy's tapping you on the shoulder, maybe it's time to listen, and maybe it's time to lean into it, lean into that joy and take responsibility for your own joy, right? You've got this. So thanks, Jamie. Thanks for spending this time with us on JOY², where joy multiplies and everything gets better. Remember, joy isn't just something you feel. It's something you create, and it's something you pass on. If this conversation sparks something in you, share it, because joy is contagious. What we're building here is bigger than a podcast. It's a reminder and a movement that how we live, work, and lead truly matters. Until next time, live with joy, lead with purpose, and never forget to have fun. Keep choosing joy, squared. And if you're enjoying the journey, we'd be grateful if you subscribe, like, and share JOY² so the ripple keeps spreading.